Hi, welcome back to Watchwolf Studio. Today we're going to be reviewing Irish Gauge, designed by Tom Russell, artwork by Ian O'Toole. This version is by Winsome Games from a design originally by Capstone Games. It's a 3 to 5 player game. There is not a solitaire version. You can't play it with 2 people, and you want 4 or 5 if you can get them. Let's take a look at the components. We've got a game board that shows us the island of Ireland, and it shows us a little bit of terrain and major cities of the island. Then we have share certificates for each of 5 railway companies, and there are different numbers of share certificates for each of the 5 companies, and we get a set of locomotive tokens which will represent track laying for each of the railways. So we see it in each of the 5 colours, 19 in each colour. Then we get dividend cubes, and these also double as items of interest on the board. And we get a bag to put them in. This one's not fabulous. It's almost Zen-like in its simplicity. Then we have a calculator here to tell us how to divide up the share dividend. And we have some currency which is in the historical Irish punt in 10, 5 and 1 denominations. Let's do a brief rules overview. In each player's turn, they can do one of 4 actions. You can build a railway, which means laying locomotive markers to connect up cities. You can choose a share to be auctioned from the available shares. You can place a cube from the bag on one of the towns to make it into a city, or you can draw blindly from the bag 3 cubes, and then the railway lines will pay out according to which cubes have been drawn. So in this case, white, pink and black cities would pay out. Then play proceeds clockwise amongst the players until the last cube has been drawn from the bag in either of those actions, and then the game will end at the end of that turn. And the winner will be the one with the most cash money and the most money represented by the face value of the shares they own. Let's take a closer look at the placing track action. In this action, players have 3 points to spend in their turn, and they can use those points to lay railway track for 1 company. So if I choose, if I own shares in the Belfast company, then I lay orange markers, and normally the cost is 1 for a clear hex, but it's 1.5 if the hex is occupied, 1.5, 3. And it's 2 if I want to lay track on difficult terrain, but I can't share occupied difficult terrain. If you have points left over, for example, you've spent 2.5 points because you've laid, let's try this, 1, 2.5, you can't spend that 0.5 points later on. And you can only spend the points, as I've said, with 1 railway company. Now in the turn, a player may choose to auction a share certificate. When the game starts, we lay out the share certificates in ascending order, and you may choose to auction the topmost of any of the available shares. So if I choose this one, I must start the bidding at least 4, could be higher. And at the end of the game, this certificate's only going to be worth 4. So regardless of what I pay for it, because of the auction, it's only worth 4 in this case. And then the auction proceeds clockwise. Players can either pass or increase the bid. They can increase it by any amount they want. Again, if you know how much your opponent has got, you can deliberately price them out of the auction. Once you've passed, you may not re-enter the auction. In the first turn, we start with an initial share auction, and the rule is slightly different. We will auction off the shares, starting with the yellow cork line and proceeding through purple, orange, blue and red. And in this situation, the first player may pass. They need not bid the minimum value. And if all the players pass, which they might have to do if they haven't got enough money, then the share certificate goes to that player. I'll return to that later at the end of the video and talk a little bit about that. Now, the call for dividends action. In this action, players draw blindly from the bag 3 dividend cubes. And we lay them up here on the drawn dividends cube marker. These cubes determine which railway lines pay out. And the rule is this: you must have 2 matching cities or a matching city and a town. Now in this case I've drawn 2 white and a black, and that means that the orange line has a black, a town, so it will pay out, and another town. And the blue line has a pink and a town, but we don't have a pink drawn cube, so the blue line won't pay a dividend. And the red line has white and a town and a pink. So it has the bare minimum, a matching city and a town. So the orange and the red lines would pay out in this case. And then, having worked out if they pay out, we calculate how much they pay out, and this is written in the key here. Towns with a matching cube pay 4p, and a town gives £2. So the orange line will gain £4 here, £2 for the town, and another £2 for the town here, £8 divided equally amongst the shareholders. Let's suppose that the shares were divided between 2 players, then they would each get half of that dividend, and we use the track here to score it. So we said £8 divided by 2 is £4 each. But we'll do the red line, and let's imagine that there had been all 3 shares sold. One player had 2 of them and the other player had 1 of them. In that case, the red line is getting 4 for this city, 2 for this town, and nothing for the pink city. So £6 divided by 3 shares, £2 each. The shares are rounded up, and that's why we use this calculating grid here, because it's already done the round-up calculations for us. Now the next action is drawing a special interest marker, and what this means is that we're putting a coloured cube down on one of the towns to turn it into a city. If there's already a cube there, we can't put another cube on top of it. It stays for the duration of the game. But if the town is empty, we can put a cube onto it, and that turns it into a city. And as we know from the previous section, that means that if a black cube is drawn, then this line will pay out if the line meets the other qualifications for drawing. So we choose a cube from the bag. We don't have to draw it blindly, and we choose where to put it down. For example, if you were the orange player, and let's suppose that your track were running like this, you have a pink and a black cube already, and if you place a white cube, now you know that whatever combination of cubes is drawn, you're going to get a dividend payout from these cities. Now there's an extra rule, which is that if your railway company can connect the 3 major cities of Belfast, Dublin and Galway, then you get £12, and that's divided by the number of shareholders in the company at the time, just like any other dividend. So generally what we're doing is we're laying railway track to try to connect up cities and towns, and the virtue of that is that when we draw dividend cubes, let's have some random dividend cubes, and when we've drawn dividend cubes, then I've got more cities pay out. More cities paying out more and more likely to pay out more. So in this case, I've drawn pink and white. I'm paying out pink, white, not the black, but I'm paying out all of the towns that I've connected as well. So that's why we're connecting up the cities, and that's why we're placing the cubes. So if I put another, let's say, white cube here on this town, then when a white cube is drawn, I'm getting an extra couple of pounds for this rather than just the £2. We're using the cubes when we place the special interest marker. We're using that to make sure we get a payout. So if I'm placing this here, the blue player now is in the position where, as long as a pink or a black is drawn, they'll pay out in this railway line. Then we're auctioning off shares. We're trying to get majority shares in the railways. This is very difficult to do, and one of the big interests of the game. But we're hoping to get majority shares where if there were 3 players, I'm holding 2 and the other players are only holding 1, and then I'm getting that much more share when the dividend is paid out. Remember, the point of the game is to be the biggest capitalist and have the most money at the end of the game, the value of our shares and how much cash money we've got left over. We can get into a situation at the end where if there are only a few dividend cubes remaining in the bag, remember we can look into the bag and draw cubes out. It takes us one of our actions it takes us a whole action in a turn, but we could do that. So for example, if there were only 3 cubes remaining and I had railways that were mostly white cities and another player had railways that were mostly black cities, I could place the black cube somewhere else entirely, somewhere irrelevant, so that when those are drawn, I'm profiting and they're not profiting as much. Let's set up the board for a playthrough. The first thing we do is give each of the players £20, and then we lay out starting railway markers for each of the companies. So Belfast Company's up here in Belfast, the Great Southern is here down in Dublin, along with the Midland, and so on and so forth, as marked on the board here, look. Then we take 4 cubes of each colour, and we're not going there, and put those in the bag. Then we draw the cubes out at random and put them on the capital cities, sorry, the major cities that are marked with navy blue. So I'll do that. I just do that in clockwise order usually. Something like this. And you can see what's happening here. There's a balance. There's only so many cubes of each colour can be drawn, 4 in fact. And then we put all the remaining cubes back into the bag. So in this case we drew more pink cubes. We drew all the pink cubes and 2 white and 2 black cubes. Then we begin the first turn auction. Now, as I said, the first turn auction is different to the other auctions because players may pass. But let's suppose that player A bids 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, pass, pass, pass. Then this second player will pay £12 for the share in that railway, and they are currently the majority shareholder. Then the player that wins that auction starts the auction for the next companies. Remember, they can pass if they want to, but in this case they can bid on the share, so they will. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, pass. He has to pass, pass. So this person pays £11 for the share. And play proceeds like that until each of the companies has been auctioned. And this is why the pass mechanism is in the initial auction. It may be that players have run out of money by the time they get to the last one, in which case the last person can pass the first share, and if nobody else has got money, they will have to pass and they'll get the share for free. You want to avoid this. I'll talk about that in the wrap-up at the end, because we figured out a house rule to work around that, but that's how the initial auction is managed usually. So the initial auction has taken place and one share from each of the companies has been auctioned off and the game begins. So we're starting with this player. This player ended up with 2 shares, one in the Waterford line and the other in the Midland line, and this means they can build railways in these 2 colours. So let's suppose that they start down here in the lucrative southern Irish region. 1, 2, 3, avoiding the difficult terrain there. So the next player has shares in the Cook and Bandon South Coast Railway. They can build yellow. Now you can see here that he also has 3 points, but in order to move forward, he can either go over the difficult terrain, which will cost him 2, or share hexes, which costs 1.5. So it doesn't really matter which way they go, it's going to be difficult for them. Let's suppose they do something a bit different and go 1 here and 2 for the difficult terrain there. And play is going to continue like that for each of the players. When the initial auction was over, they had £9 remaining. The cost of the Belfast Railway is £8, so they could put this share up for auction and start the bidding at £9, which is all of their money. Nobody else has got £9, they have to pass, and he takes a half share of the Belfast Railway for £9. Now play's proceeded a little bit, we're in the second turn. This 4th player now has an interesting opportunity. They own 50% of the Belfast Railway, and the 3rd player only owns Belfast Railway. So until they earn more money, until they have more money and can buy another share, their fortunes are tied up with the Belfast Railway, which means that they really have to make some connections and maybe place some special interest markers, draw dividends, so that they'll get a round of income. But the 4th player has a different opportunity. Because they've got shares in 2 railway lines, what they can do is develop the blue one and let the 3rd player do all the hard work. And this is one of the fascinations of the game, is that all of the elements of the game are continually in balance, and what you're trying to do is balance it your way favourably and balance it the other way, the other players unfavourably. So let's suppose that the 4th player starts developing this railway here, 2 for the difficult terrain and 1 for the urban marker there. Right, this first player's going to start their 2nd line. As you can see, they are majority shareholders in 2 lines, and this line would pay out as long as there were a white and a pink, so there's a pretty good chance of that happening. Remember, there are slightly less pink cubes in the bag, but he thinks to hedge his bet and starts the red line. Let's say 1, 2, 3 there. The 2nd player extends the Cork Railway, and they place 1 here so that they've included a pink cube. And now they could go, let's see, 2.5. They can't do anything with the remaining half point, so it's the next player's turn. He, remember, is stuck with trying to make the Belfast Railway pay out, and when it does pay out, he's only going to get half the money. But there's 1. What he can do here is include the town. Now this railway line is going to pay out as long as a black cube and or a pink cube is drawn. So he's played 1, 2, and let's go 3. Then the 4th player doesn't need to do anything with the Belfast line, and can extend the Great Southern Line. 1, 2, 3. He's got a pink and a black and several towns. This line is going to be pretty lucrative when it pays out. And now the hapless third player. But the hapless player pays 1.5 to make that connection. He's got 1.5 points remaining. Let's say he goes here. And what he's done is completed the 3 capital cities, the 3 major cities, and now this pays out a £12 dividend. So we use the dividend track, £12. There are 2 shareholders, so it pays £6 each. So each of the shareholders has now got an extra, sorry, that was wrong, £6. And finally, this player, he's going to call for dividends. He's in this terrific position here where he's got all of these towns and he's got 1 city of every type. So this railway line is sure to pay out. Let's take a look at the call for dividends. So I'm going to draw 3 at random from the bag. And we've got 2 whites and a black. Let's see what happens here. So each railway is calculated in order on the board. So the Cork Railway, does it pay out? It's got white and black. Well, they've got white and 1 town. That's legitimate. So £4, £2, another £2 is 8, nothing for the pink, nothing for this pink. So they've got £8. There is 1 shareholder, so they get £8. Now the Waterford line, we calculate that. Does it pay out? It's got 1 matching city. This is not a matching city, but it has a town. So 1 matching city and a town is enough. They've got £6. There's 1 shareholder. So we know that that is going to be £6 to them. They've got some money again, but it's not going to be enough for them to buy a second share. Great Southern. Pink doesn't pay, but white does, and he has plenty of towns, as does black. 2, 4, 6, plus 4 is 10, plus 4 is 14. They're the only shareholder, so they get 14. They're looking good. And finally, the Midland line. Pink doesn't pay out, white does pay out, and a town means they pay out. So no, it's not connecting there, look, so they don't get anything for the black. 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 2 is 8, nothing for the pink. They get £8. Now, I forgot the Orange Railway. The Belfast line also, we calculate to see if it pays out. There is a black. Pinks don't pay, but he fortuitously included these towns, so 4, 2 and 8, and that's paid out twice, so the 2 shareholders get £4 each. Speaking basically about the balance of the game, this player wants to retain majority shares in the companies they've got, and that's true for all of these. Remember, this company's only paying out equally for both of these 2 players, so it isn't really to any of their advantage. It will put them ahead of these players, but it won't put them ahead in terms of one another. This player's looking to increase his advantage by cornering the shares in the blue Great Southern line. Now the third player really needs to get in. He knows that he's going to be outbidded by the 4th player, but let's suppose he starts an auction here because he knows that this player wants to buy this share, so what he's hoping to do is make this as difficult as possible. So he starts the bidding at his maximum, £15. He knows he's not going to get it. 16, 17, this player has to pass. 17, 18. 19 is this player's maximum, and this player pays 20 to buy the share. So they've retained their majority in the Great Southern Line, and now the other players are in the position to bid amongst themselves for the other shares. Now this player won the auction, but it was this player's turn. So that turn is ended, and now it moves to this player. Now, perhaps this was an error on the part of this player, because this player was already ahead with dividends. Let's suppose they called dividends again. Now they're putting themselves farther ahead. Or is that further ahead? Now we imagine that that dividend has been paid out and the players are wealthier again, and let's imagine that this player is going to place a special interest. Remember, they don't have to pick blind, they can look at what's in there, and this means that we've got a sense of how long the game is going to last and when it's going to end. So in this case, most of the cubes are still available. They have purple and red railway line, so let's see if they can maximize the gains there. What they really want to do is maximize the payouts for red. Perhaps this is a good idea for them, but maybe this would be better. It's going to be fairly easy for them to connect up. Let's suppose they go here. The problem with that is that it's good for the yellow player. So let's suppose they go here, and that's placing a special interest cube. So we've covered all of the basic rules in the game. We've done placing railway tracks, we've done auctioning a share, we've done placing special interest cubes, and we've done drawing dividend cubes and auctioning off the share certificates. Let's imagine that we're at the end of the game. What we're doing is adding up the total wealth of each player in terms of the face value of their share certificates. So this is 9 plus 8 is 17, plus 4 is 21, plus 4 is 25. This player would have 25. This player would have 23, and 5 is 28. This player would have 17, 22, 23, and this player has got 11, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. And the winner would be the one with the most amount of money. So finally, what do we think about this game? I think it's absolutely brilliant. This is the best game I've played all year. I highly recommend it. The game cost me $25 at a second-hand board game store. It was still in its shrink wrap, unplayed. It is light enough to put into your backpack and go across town, have a meal with your friends, and you can crack the game out and play together. It plays for all kinds of different people, very competitive players or very social players, and I think that the game is best played amongst people who have played it the same number of times, because it's incredibly finely balanced. So it's perhaps the game that a group of gamers play before they play some other game. It only takes an hour to play, 45 minutes at the least, hour and 15 at the very most. It's very, very fast, it's very enjoyable. You don't have to have used up all the railways, you don't have to have sold all the shares. It's a terrific game, I highly recommend it. So that's it from Watchwell Studio this week. Join us again next week for something else, and if you've got any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. See you again. We've got pink and white and black, and we don't want to go there. So, we really don't want to go there. Okay. We're not going to talk about the colour of the cubes and turn up to any social gathering with your friends and whip it out after dinner. So finally, what do we think about this game? Are you going to fucking stand there on that